Good afternoon and welcome to this week's edition of the People Progressing podcast. And today I have Sandy Gennaro, who is an amazing speaker, but more than that, he's an amazing man who's done so much in his life and now has served all the way through this. And you're going to hear his story today. But he's an accomplished, amazing drummer who was a drummer for Cyndi Lauper, Joan Jett, the Blackhearts, Bo Diddley, the Monkees, Michael Bolton, Benny Monroe. You can just keep going on and on. We'll get into that, but you just amaze me, Sandy, and I appreciate you coming on. And what I do to start my podcast always is ask my guests to kind of describe where you grew up. What were some things you did as a kid? What did you like to do? What are some of the things that were passionate for you and some of the influences you had on your life?
Well, I was born and raised in New York City until about the age of 10 when my family migrated to Staten Island. And one of my passions growing up was baseball. I saw my first Yankee game in 1962, and I've been a fan ever since. And I played second base all through Little League and Babe Ruth League, and I ended up playing in high school, and then alongside my drumming career, I started playing drums when I was 14, and that drumming fire was lit when I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan in 1964. And from that moment on, so I tried to balance my passion for baseball and drumming, but drumming was really the thing that really inspired me and what really affected me to the core. And I loved the way I felt when I played music on the drum set. So, and then not only that, but the late gigs. When I started playing bars, I was playing in bars from, until 2 in the morning. And then I had a 10 o'clock baseball practice. So, and I looked in the mirror and I was like 150 pounds, the same weight I am now. And I said, well, I'm probably not going to get any bigger than this. So my fantasy of playing second base for the Yankees is probably going to be out of reach. So I decided to go with the drumming. So that's basically been my passion. And then one thing led to the next and to the next. It was like the domino theory. And I ended up on big stages, and by thinking positive and treating people the right way, fairly, and that's basically my thing. And it goes all the way up to how you treat people well leads to really good things in your life, and you get inspired by what I call my God energy inside me, and all human beings have it. And when you do the right thing and you treat people right and you think positive about it, you're inspired to do things that create not ingratiate, but inspire your career.
Now, I want to go back a little bit, Sandy, because I did not realize the baseball background. And we were just talking off air about my baseball background. I didn't realize that you played and all that stuff. That's pretty cool.
Oh, absolutely.
But I want to go into your mindset a little bit at an early age. You talk about, and we'll get into this a great deal into this podcast, but to have that mindset of service, that mindset of positivity, that mindset of a vision of how I want things to go, and that God energy and so forth. When do you think you developed that, or when that first came into your life? How old were you when you think that happened?
Well, Joe, around the dinner table, I always was taught by my parents at a very young age about how important it is to treat people the way you want to be treated if you were in their shoes, looking at life through their lens. So I always knew that treating people, and it became part of me that, my dad always said, never do anything or say anything that's going to allow people to speak negatively about the Gennaro name. So that really was a signpost for me that I had in the back of my head growing up. But I always wondered, especially when I started playing drums after I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, do we have any control over what happens to us in our life? Is our thought process Does our thought process influence our future as far as the people that cross our paths, the ideas that we have, the positivity, whatever? And I read this book called The Law of Success by Napoleon Hill. And in it, and it's still around. I highly recommend this book. It was written in the 20s, but there's been many revised editions since, and it's available on Amazon. And in it, he talks about what you can conceive in your mind, believe in your heart, you could achieve. And I said, well, that's an interesting concept. If I think it and I believe it, I could achieve it. And I put the added element of enthusiasm using, when you conceive of something in your mind, you visualize it and trying to summon up the enthusiasm that you would have if that result happened exactly the way you visualized it. In other words, you're writing your own movie. You're the director of your own mental movie, and you visualize it, and you have to believe that you're going to get it. You have to believe that you deserve it, and you have to believe that it's only a matter of time, then you get it. And there might be obstacles along the way, but it depends on your quality of your belief, and that you will go on and achieve whatever you want to achieve. And that affected that, and coupled with my growing up, how to treat people, and then your positive visualization and your positive outlook on events that happen, and your follow up on ideas that happen. Call this person, go here, do that. All in a positive way, that affects your outcome, that affects your life. And it goes all the way through my life, Joe. How did I get into speaking? Well, it's a spirit. I'm not going to tell you the story right now, unless you want to hear it, but throwing a drumstick, having a spirit of service to a handicapped person at a gig in San Diego when I was like 66, 67 years old, playing an arena in San Diego. And the service to that person led to my speaking career.
I have so many things to get into. As I read your book, I got, the positivity, the mindset of thinking positive and believing and having that belief and that enthusiasm and that belief and all that stuff. Sandy, I'm sure that not everything that you believe that you could do and had the mindset to achieve and all that kind of stuff actually came to full fruition. I have to believe that some things that you thought you could do and believed or wanted had happened probably didn't happen. Am I okay in saying that?
Yeah, you are okay in saying it, but you know what? The reason why something doesn't happen, Joe, I believe, the reason why something doesn't happen is because your God energy or your mental compass it's kind of, you're not feeling it in here. One case in point that comes to mind is that I had the idea when I was with Cyndi Lauper. I had the idea of playing keyboards so I can participate in writing songs. In other words, I've dabbled in writing lyrics as a drummer. I don't know what chord structure is and melody and theory and all of that. I just know rhythm. And so I said, you know what? Let me start taking keyboard lessons, and maybe I can start writing songs. But as I was practicing keyboards, I'm saying to myself, and I envision myself, playing keyboards and writing songs and all of that. But then I said to myself, the idea kept haunting me. Well, Sandy, you don't even know everything there is about rock drumming. So why are you spending time trying to learn a whole other instrument? So I had that feeling inside, and that was like a tug of war. Like, no, I want to do this. No, well, Sandy, you know what? You don't even know everything about rock drumming, let alone now you're teaching drums. What if somebody comes and says, teach me some basics of jazz, teach me some basics of Latin music, teach me some cha-cha, teach me a merengue, so there's a whole universe of drumming and percussive that I needed to pay attention to. So that's one visualization that I had that I was steered away from it, because if you're not feeling it in here, a lot of people have pie in the sky ideas, but you know what I mean? Sometimes it doesn't happen, and you have to trust your gut when it comes to that. But that's a very interesting question, Joe. Very interesting question, because not everything that I wanted to do came to fruition, But, I wanted to be in a band. My first project was a band called Blackjack with Michael Bolton in it before he became famous. And that was my idea of my career. This is my band. I'm an equal partner. I go everywhere with the band. I record, on the road, all the songs are blah, blah, blah. Even though I'm not writing the songs, I'm still the drummer in the band, like John Bonham and Led Zeppelin or Charlie Watts and the Stones. That was my idea of a career. But then things happened and I needed a gig, and I get a chance to join this new artist in 1984 named Cyndi Lauper. And I was just a sideman. I started out as a sideman, a salary guy. So I went with that. So then I became a sideman to different artists like Joan Jett and Bo Diddley. I wasn't in. So there's one dream that I had, but maybe it wasn't right for me. Sometimes you have dreams that the God energy says that's not the right thing. Maybe let me steer you in this direction. Sometimes our original belief is a stepping stone to something different. When you're involved in an original belief and you're on that course, maybe you'll meet somebody on that course that takes you in a complete different direction. Like my throwing a drumstick to a woman in a wheelchair in San Diego. I had no idea what I was going to be doing when I retired from being on the road with a rock band. And so there it was, I had no idea what I was going to be doing and how I was going to keep the lights on when I'm going to be 72 in July. So, and that was a whole brand new career. I didn't visualize that. That was the God energy putting that in front of me based on the fact that I wanted to put a smile on this handicapped woman in a wheelchair in an audience in San Diego, California, 2016. So sometimes the God energy takes care of what you, unbeknownst to you, it's weird how the universe works, but the common denominator is you got to treat people right. And regardless of whether your positivity and your goal is realized or not, you have to just think positively about it. I thought I wasn't concerned. I wasn't thinking negatively. Oh, what am I going to do when I'm 75? How am I going to keep the lights on or whatever? I wasn't concerned about that. I just let nature take its course.
That's where I wanted you to go with this, because the reason I asked that question is because there's a person out there who reads your book and says, I get the visual, I get the positivity, I get the coming from my heart. This is what I want to do, and I'm going to make it happen. And like you said, sometimes it doesn't happen. How do you trust going back into that? How do you trust going back into the visualization, the trusting the heart, trusting the positivity and all that? And you answered it by saying, just treat people right.
Just treat people right and maintain a positive mental outlook.
Right. Even if it doesn't work out.
It doesn't work out. It could be the universe, and I interchange God energy, universe, higher power, whatever. It's a power greater than ourselves. Sometimes the universe says, and I had plenty of those kind of indications of doubt growing up playing in bars for 10, 15 years and the tri-state area of New York, going, okay, where's my next step? Where's my next level? But sometimes the God energy says you're not ready. Sometimes, it's like you can plant the seed and water it and put sunshine on the seed and make the idea positive and all that. But the seed germinates on its own timetable.
There you go.
You don't go, okay, you can grow now,
Yeah, there you go.
It'll grow when it wants to grow. So that's a concept I always know. Maybe I'm not ready. Maybe the universe is saying, let's see how bad you want to be a rock star drummer, to be on a stage with a platinum artist. Let's see how bad you want it. So I'm going to put this in front of you. I'm going to have this. You're going to go on the road now, and this manager is going to rip you off. So at the end of 4 weeks of not getting paid for 4 weeks of road work, are you going to put your head in the sand and go, oh, this business ain't for me? Like a lot of people do. Yeah, and I know a lot of personal friends that did that. Once the going got rough, they wanted to bail out and get the steady job at Home Depot. Well, go ahead. Good luck. Not that I think there's anything wrong with Home Depot. I love Home Depot and the people that work there, but that's not for me. And I wasn't going to succumb to that temptation to go in the easy route, not having a fixed mindset where, okay, well, this is not for me. No, I'll navigate around the obstacle yeah, I'll try to get my money back from the manager that ripped me off. But after a certain point, I'm going to just pretend he moved to Siberia without cell service.
I love how you describe it because there's so many people out there that do give up on it, that do give up on that vision, that dream, that coming from the heart to go do things and so forth. They give up on it too soon. It's amazing to me, Sandy, how at such an early age in your life, even with some obstacles thrown in there, that made you kind of question your vision and made you question where you're coming from, your heart. You still had the wherewithal to overcome that and keep that vision and keep that tenacity and keep that growth.
Yeah.
Amazing, because a lot of people at a young age don't have that capacity to do that.
Right. And you know, the thought I always had, Joe, was, uh, oh, let me grasp it. It just went out of my mind. Oh, I never, and I remember thinking this when I was a teenager. Yeah, and things happen where you're tempted to just throw the towel in. Where I never, and I use the term 60s. Now I've already surpassed the 60s, but I said, I don't want to be in my 60s, sitting on a porch somewhere, rocking in a rocking chair going, man, what if I would have stuck it out another year? What if, because, I told this to my students when they were kind of getting bummed out, having a 27-year teaching career. I said, you just keep going. You don't want to sit on your porch going, because it only takes one phone call to change your life. It doesn't take a group of 50 to happen simultaneously, not 50 phone calls. It just takes one. So just every time the phone rings, that could be it. But you got to maintain your work ethic, keep your name out there and go do the due diligence and make sure you're ready. You have to stay, and it's really a discipline when nothing is happening the way you want it in your career, but you still sit down at the drums and practice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It takes a lot. It takes a lot of determination to do that. But I did it. And that's the thought that drove me. One of the thoughts that drove me was that I don't want to be retired and giving up, and be remorseful for not having stuck it out for another year and getting that phone call. And you know what happens? The phone call comes.
Yeah.
The phone call comes.
Yeah. And I was a coach for a long time. You and I talked about that. And one of the things I always told my players, and I still do to this day, is to fear regret.
Right. And that's exactly it.
I wanted them to fear regret, and then I wanted them to win the process. Whatever that process of achieving that goal is, you better set that process, win that process, because you don't want to have regret in the end. And it hit me a little later in life, Sandy. I used to think kind of the same way, but it really hit me about 5 years ago. I took my dad, he was 84 at the time, to see his lifelong friend that he'd been friends with since kindergarten. And this guy's name was Joe as well. And he was 84 years old, laying in a bed in a nursing home, couldn't get out of bed. And he was an airline pilot his whole life. And he looked over at my dad at 84 years old and he said, I just wish I could fly again. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. It's like, when I'm 84, am I going to say, I just wish I could coach again? And I can honestly say, yes, I could. That's what I'm going to say when I'm 84. Right. And it's kind of that same concept, but I never wanted to have regret in my life. And that's one of the things that I try to get to my players and students and people I coach now in the executive level, is we don't want to have regret later on. Make sure that you're winning the process so you don't have that.
Absolutely. Now, let me ask you a question, Joe.
Yeah.
You explained to me off the air that you were an aspiring pitcher and you played. Did you play college ball too, or through high school?
Yeah, I played 4 years of college baseball.
Okay, so you were drafted by the Reds. You were drafted by the Reds and
the Seattle Mariners.
Okay, so and because of injury or because of a bum shoulder, it curtailed your baseball career.
It did. Yeah.
You look at that. Do you look at that as a regret? How do you look at that situation? Do you say, well, oh shucks, or why did the God Energy deal give me that hand where my shoulder was, why was it inspired? Why was I inspired to throw, breaking balls at 14 years old, to
Yeah.
screw up my rotator cuff or what? How did you deal with that? Because that's a major, to be drafted. You can taste the cake. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it was there. I played minor league baseball. The only regret I had in the whole situation was I never got to throw one pitch in minor league baseball healthy.
Right.
And I don't have any regrets about any of it. And when it was done, I literally, Sandy, I woke up from surgery, and the first thing the doctor said when I woke up from surgery, the very first thing I heard was, you can't play anymore. It's just too messed up.
Wow. Wow.
And but I had a degree, so I knew I could fall back on that. And then I went to work for a company, and I just didn't feel like I was doing anything for anybody. And I had to make a leap. And I went back to school and got a teaching certificate, and that led me into my career as a teacher and a coach. And I feel like I lived my purpose and passion for 30 straight years doing that.
So there's no regret at all about even when
No,
even when you hear Garrett Cole signed for 325 million
yeah,
dollars.
I mean that's always the thought process, right? But it's not where I was supposed to be. I was supposed to be with 16, 17, 18-year-old kids and develop lifelong relationships with them and try to get them ready for life and and be a part of their life that could maybe be a difference in their life. And it got me fired up every day to go to school.
That's awesome.
So I don't really look back at that and say, there, of course there is times, it's be like, man, I could have maybe had a big house and all those things.
Right.
It doesn't, that's a great question they're asking me because I haven't really thought of it that much, but, so I had to switch my dreams, switch what I wanted to do. And, kind of like what you said, you have to sometimes pivot, but you have to pivot in a way. But I'll be honest with you, Sandy. I'm going to be completely honest with you and transparent. I didn't always trust that way of thinking. I didn't always trust the way of thinking of, I got to be positive. I got to think that this is going to happen. I got to visualize it. Because maybe I didn't trust it because of what happened with my baseball career. I didn't trust it as much as I need to now that we're talking about this, and that's why I'm asking that question. How do you trust that mindset when sometimes that mindset doesn't always perform for you or always work out for you?
Well, part of the reason too that I was able to trust that mindset, even though things weren't working out, was in my own life, growing up, I considered the alternative. Like, okay, if not for drumming, what are you going to do? And it's interesting because I had the rock star dream. I was playing clubs. I still lived in New York. I still lived at home, playing bars on weekends, going to college, whatever. And then I'll make a long story short, but my sister was a nuclear medical technologist. She was the head of nuclear medicine in City University Hospital in Staten Island. And she said, I'm going to leave to start a family. I'm going to take a leave of absence. I can put you in my position as a nuclear, they used to call it radioisotope technician. She's the one that the scans and liver scans and all of that, brain scans and all of that. In order to be trained to be, at that point in time, it was the 70s, there was no school for nuclear medicine. You have to be trained by someone that was already doing it. And my sister was trained by a radiologist. But in order to be trained by a radiologist, you had to have a prerequisite in either x-ray technology, laboratory technology, physical therapy. She said, why don't you go for one of these prerequisites? You'll get your registry or license in x-ray, for example, and then I'll train you and you could sit in my my chair, and doctors will have appointments to you. My sister was making, before she retired, she was making in the mid six figures. So it was like a very lucrative thing. It was the path was paved for me
Yeah.
to sit in, and I wasn't going to start at six figures, but I was going to start at a decent salary, and I was and doctors make appointments with me. I didn't have to shift. There was no shifts. There was no.
Right.
And I went to X-ray school. I said, okay. I went to X-ray school. I still was playing drums. I still had the drummer, but I was sort of satisfying my sister and my mother at the time. And I just wasn't feeling it. And then I got a call. Hey, Sandy, you want to go on a road with this cover band? We're going to be going on the road. We're going on tour. This is a cover band playing bars, but on the road. Instead of playing bars in New York, I was playing bars in Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, whatever, 6 nights a week, 5 sets a night, 9 p.m. to 2 a.m., 40 minutes on, 20 minutes off, 6 nights. And then on your day off, and that was the tour I was offered. And you know what? I said to my mother, I want to do this tour. No, my sister was called we had a summit in my kitchen. No, you can't. My dad was already passed away, so he wasn't involved. But no, they tried for 2 hours talking me out of it. And I said, and Sandy, just get your registry. There's 2 months left. I was third in my class of 15 kids. The X-ray technology, because I'm into photography, it came like this.
Yeah.
Get your registry. Just get it, and then you'll have that to fall back on. No, Ma, I won't need anything to fall back on. So after 2 hours, my mother, bless her heart, wherever she is, bless her heart, she went to school with me the next. Are you sure, Sandy? Yep. Okay. She went to school with me the next day, and she said she made up this BS story. Well, Sandy has a sick aunt in California. He's got to go tend to, so I got to sign him out of school. I went on the road, and looking back on it, it's like, there was no roadies. We set up all our own stuff. We had a van with all the equipment and with 2 seats in it. And the 2 guys had to sit on the amps and stuff, traveling 8-9 hours at a time. And, the suitcases were strapped on the top of the van. We didn't know where we were staying. We pulled into a town. Well, there's the club. Let's go set up. And then we'd ask the club owner, where the band stay. So we would share rooms. It was making hardly any money. But you know what? It was the time of my life.
Yeah.
It was just awesome. And I never, ever looked back. I never regretted, hey, listen, I could be, in times where it was down, rock and roll is a roller coaster.
Yeah.
So when you're down waiting for the next gig and you're looking around and nothing is happening, whatever, it's easy to think like you could when you read that Garrett Cole signs for $325 million. Yeah. It's easy to go, and sometimes I did think of that, and, full disclosure, you know what, this sucks. This sucks. You go on an audition, you prepare, but you don't get it because you have the wrong haircut. And I'm going, and that actually happened to me. And I'm going, man, I could have been making, 70, 80,000 a year, just, taking, being trained by my sister or doing, nuclear medicine.
Yeah.
But I and then I kind of shook that off because, okay, well, that ship sailed, Right. So let me go ahead and continue on the path. And that's one of the things that the God energy puts in front of you, those kinds of thoughts to see how bad you want what you want, even though things are not going as you plan. And so that's the challenge. You got to stick with it because, again, it only takes one phone call.
That's amazing. In reading your book, I was really drawn to how much your mom and dad had a prolific effect on your life. You mentioned your mom a lot. My mom said this, my mom said that. And how much did that really play into your trust in your process? Tremendous.
I lost my dad when I was 11. My mother was 40. My dad was 42. I had 2 older sisters, 15 and 17 at the time. But I remember my dad like he died yesterday. And the things that he taught me. And he used to call me his champion. I was always his champion. I remember him coming home from work, and I remember sitting on the stool in the bathroom in our house in Staten Island and watching him shave. And we had conversations there. He used to take me to Little League practice. He used to take me to Little League games. and he never ever criticized me. Oh, you booted that ball at second base.
Yeah.
He never criticized me, but he never was one to like to praise me, to patronize me with praises or whatever. But he was a tremendous influence. So, and my mother too, just she was a leader in a sense. Well, after my dad died, she was 40 years old. She had a seasonal job sewing bathing suits in a sweatshop in Manhattan. We lived on Staten Island at the time. My mother and father had a house built on Staten Island to get out of the city. Staten Island was considered the country, even though it was part of New York City. And 2 years after he had the house built, he died of cancer, and he had no life insurance. My mother worked, as I said, a seasonal job, so she was laid off all summer and collected unemployment. And my sisters and I always had a Catholic education. We always had, even though there was the commute back and forth on the ferry, back and forth to Staten Island, we always had a hot meal on the table. My mother never complained. She never went for therapy. She never took mood enhancers or whatever the tranquilizers or whatever. She never was involved in that. And she never, and the thing that inspired me, and almost I get emotional when I think about it, because she said to me, she was 40, and she was, my wife sitting in the next room right now is in her late 50s, and she's still beautiful as ever. My mother was almost 20 years younger than my wife is at the moment. And my mother was very attractive. And we used to tell her, my sisters and I, why don't you go to the Catholic church has like parents without partners or different meetings, different divorcee, widower things. No, I can never love another man like I loved your dad. And I'm saying, well, you don't have to fall in love with them. You don't have to go to sleep with them. You don't have to even hold their hand. Just go to dinner and have a conversation with somebody out of your normal circle. No, when I have a wedding to go to or a funeral to go to, you're my escort, Sandy. Wow. You are my escort. And, as she went on, an interesting story is that she was in her early 70s, and she would say, as long as my family is around my dinner table having gravy on Sunday, I'm happy. Yeah. And the Italian, for those who don't know what gravy is, it's the red sauce, the marinara sauce and the meatballs, And she used to say, when I die, Daddy's not going to recognize me with all these wrinkles. She used to go. And she was just a major inspiration. And there are many stories I can tell regarding my mother, and the stories that I still remember. And we don't have until 4:00 this afternoon. Well, but Joe, I'm telling you right now, my mother was a major influence just by example, not stuff that she said, just by the way she lived her life. And she never had a crutch, even though in many people's eyes, she had many reasons to have crutches or to do this or that, or be addicted to this or that, or drink or whatever, complaining, bitter, none of that. She was none of that. So to answer your question in a long-winded kind of way, my parents had a tremendous amount of influence in the way I think, and my fortitude and my determination to carry on in light of the circumstances that surround you. Carry on, because the sun will come up tomorrow, whether you want it to or not. And I look at my mother, and still she's gone almost 20 something years now. She died a little after 9/11, 2001. So she's still a major influence, and will continue. My parents will continue to be a major influence until I push up daisies.
So you answered, going back to our earlier conversation when I asked you, how do you trust that process of visualizing, having that energy, that positive energy and everything else? You just answered it.
That's it.
You got it. You said you watched your mom do that every day. You watched your mom do that every day. And that's where get it now. I'm sure your daughter has the same.
Yep. And my wife and I instilled the same principles in my daughter. And I'll tell you what, my daughter You take care of you add water and sunshine to the
Yeah.
seed. And our daughter, we can't be more thankful for, for our daughter, the way she is and the habits that she has and don't have and all of that. She's 28 right now, and we're very, very thankful. But let me add something to the being fortunate to have very, very nurturing parents. Well, I've heard this before. Well, Sandy, or you read in the paper where my mother was addicted to crack. I don't know who my father is. I was brought up. This is a hypothetical thing.
Mhm.
I was born in a ghetto, and all my friends did drugs and whatever. But and some people you like to use that as an excuse, but it's not as an excuse because there are people that are in that situation that go on to be senators and congressmen.
Mhm.
And then you get the people that were born with the silver spoon in their mouth, and their dad's a doctor or whatever. Their mom is a philanthropist, and they have all kinds of money, and they live on Park Avenue. And the kid grows up to be addicted to heroin
Mhm.
or something, or ends up to be a child molester or whatever. So regardless, you can't use the fact that you didn't have a nurturing upbringing on your demise. In other words, in general, you can't blame outside circumstances for your plight in life. You can always change. It may be difficult and it may take a long time, and it's just not an overnight. Well, let me start thinking this way. It takes a while, and it takes determination and initiative. But again, you have to look at the light at the end of the tunnel. And if you want to change the way you are, it starts with one day at a time. But it is possible.
And it's possible because I believe this, that we do have a superhuman power. We're not Superman where we can fly and do all that kind of stuff, but we do have a superhuman power, and that power is the power of choice.
Yep.
And if you choose to do what you just said, then you can get it done.
Yep.
If you choose the other way, then you'll go the other way. But
Right.
the coolest thing in the world that we have is the power to choose which way we
Right.
want to go.
That's the coolest thing, but in some people's minds, Joe, that is the worst thing
Yeah.
because you have to choose the positivity.
Right. Right.
I talk about my book, Belief, Enthusiasm, Attitude, Tenacity, and Service, but you have to look at those aspects in a positive way. You could be attractive to molesting a child. You could be attracted to going into and gives you satisfaction to going and spraying a grammar school with the Uzi. You know what I mean? So it's got to be on the positive side of
Right.
things.
Right.
And that's the source of most problems on this planet is the fact that certain people, a lot of people don't recognize that God energy. They look at themselves as walking around this planet in a cocoon. And it's all about them. It's all about what's in it for me.
Right.
Take. And again, I appreciate this conversation, Joe, because I like talking to you, and you ask very pertinent questions, and but we can go on till
I
five
know.
o'clock.
I
But
yeah, I have to go over a quote that you have,
go ahead.
and I know where you get it now. What we do for ourselves dies within us.
Yes,
What we do for others is immortal.
that's correct.
When I read that quote from you, I read it and I'm like, God, that gives me goosebumps. I know now. I think of your dad when I see that quote.
Right.
And you talk
Right.
about that conversation at the dinner table. I got serious goosebumps right now, Sandy. You talk about that conversation at the dinner table about serving and helping others. And I know you're a big empathy guy. I am too. I think it's the strongest word in the English language. And if our world had more of it, we'd be in a lot better place. But your dad really instilled empathy within you.
Yeah. Empathy, and I like the word altruism. Empathy is putting yourself in somebody else's shoes
Right.
and treating them accordingly, how they want to be treated. Don't treat people like you want to be treated. Treat people like they want to be treated if you were walking and looking at life through their lens. But a sense of altruism is just generally having having within you, the way you live your life is thinking outside yourself. You look for opportunities to put a smile on somebody's face. You look like you with your baseball team and coaching a baseball team. You look for ways to have people or do something. If you could suggest to somebody a way to do something to make their lives better or to make their game better, or throw the curveball like this, not like that, because it'll whatever. And then you see the greatest satisfaction that you have and that I've had as a teacher, seeing him throw that curveball like you suggested, him going in 7 innings and 10 strikeouts. It's like, that's one of the gratifying things to me as a teacher, is seeing the results of your altruism manifest in others to make them better people. And then you know what? They'll experience that from you, and then they'll carry it on and have a sense of altruism from, maybe they'll go on and coach a baseball team or use some of Joe's advice to their kids. It's like the positivity, you permeate positivity. It's like, just keep paying it forward. Yeah. And a lot of times, all the problems we have on this planet, most of them are because people think within themselves. People think, like having the biggest checking account on their gravestone is going to make them happy. Yeah. But do you want your checking account on your gravestone? Do you really want that?
Yeah.
I don't. I want to be remembered for having, for people being grateful for having known me.
Right.
Yeah. So
I pray every night that I can be a blessing in people's lives.
That's it.
And I look at it now with what I'm doing now with Vistage and running my executive teams and so forth. Same opportunity. And every one of the business leaders I work with has the same opportunity with the people they work with.
Exactly right. And I talk about, in my Vistage environment, I talk about, having relationships.
Right.
It's how important relationships are. And it's not a leader puts his attention on the relationships, and the relationships manifest the numbers.
Right.
Where bosses just pay attention to the numbers. Right. Hey, you don't do this, you're out of here. And I've worked for artists that way.
Yeah.
And that's a boss. And so in a Vistage environment, Sandy, I have a multi-million-dollar corporation. I got offices in 5 states. I got 1,000 employees. I said, well, you have an executive team, don't you? If you have an office in Charlotte, you have a head of that office in Charlotte, right? Oh yeah. And they have their teams. Okay, well, it's your job to indoctrinate that the head of the office in Charlotte, your executive team. Yeah. And then they'll carry the message on down through the workforce as the pyramid gets bigger and bigger down towards the bottom. But it comes from you. And another really cool metaphor that I mentioned in all my presentations, but especially in Vistage, where you the CEO of a multi-million-dollar organization, you're the drummer in your band, babe.
Yeah.
You're the drummer in your band.
Yeah.
And there's nobody more important on a stage than the drummer is, and there's nobody important. I don't give you shit if you have offices in 15 countries. Yeah. It's still your responsibility, and the company goes as you go because you're the drummer, and it's your job to inspire your executive team to manifest a common goal, and then your executive team again is the trickle down, like we said, down the pyramid.
I call it the head coach.
The head coach.
Yeah. And for me, so you and I kind of have the similar analogies. I say exactly this. Right. Are you a people leader or a data leader?
Right.
Big. And awesome. Your people are the ones who are going to generate the data for you.
Correct.
So you better be taking care of your people. And I don't like the term boss anymore because of what you just said. I have a whole sheet that has boss on one side and coach or leader on the other side.
So do I.
And so we're right on the same page there. I wanted to go in a little bit. We're already been 45 minutes.
Go ahead, Joe. We can do another 15 minutes.
Okay. You talk about BEATS, your acronym for BEATS, BEATS, which is belief, enthusiasm, attitude, tenacity, and service.
Correct.
and you kind of put that in a pyramid format with attitude at the top and then the rest of them down. Can you just explain that real quick?
Well, it all, to me, all of everything comes from your attitude, of your way of thinking within yourself, like the thoughts you have. So it all emanates from your attitude. And because thoughts are basically the only thing that we have total control over in our lives, is how we think, the quality of our thoughts. And, our thoughts start out as little flimsy cobwebs, but then when they're thought about often, and they're thought about often before you go to bed, when you wake up and you're thinking, then you start believing those thoughts. And when you start believing those thoughts as being true, then especially if you enunciate them to other people, they become very, very powerful, because thoughts become words, and words become action, and actions develop your certain habits, and your certain habits develop your personality, and your personality basically is how people perceive you as a person. And then that turns out to be your legacy, how people think of you, and how people are going to think of you after you're pushing up daisies. What are they going to talk about Joe? What are they talking about? We're going to talk about Sandy after Sandy's gone. How are they going to talk about him? It all starts with a thought that's entertained very often. And then you can go into, which I did, I used affirmations. Like I looked at a picture of me on a big stage, not a picture of me, but a picture of a drummer on a big stage after I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. And I put that picture on my bathroom mirror, and I enunciated to myself, Sandy, that's going to be you someday. That's going to be you. It was a picture from a drummer's standpoint, looking out at an audience, a big cheering audience. And I visualize that all the time. So it all emanates from your attitude and your belief system. Again, and your belief in a higher power at work in our lives, and then as a result of that and being excited about the future, that's where enthusiasm comes in. And then your tenacity, based on the quality of your attitude and the quality of your belief, then that gives you the tenacity to work through different issues. And then service, of course, service is very important. And again, it all encapsulates. I could just use the acronym of attitude, because it all comes from that.
Yeah.
Your belief comes from that. Your enthusiasm depends on the quality of your belief. If you really believe inside that something is possible, and you feel the excitement as if it did occur exactly like you envisioned it, well, that's enthusiasm. And then it all goes as service to others, obviously, how important that is. And your tenacity depends on your quality of your belief and your attitude.
Right.
Because if you don't think, and you get ripped off by that manager, and you go, oh, frig this, I don't want this career.
Yeah.
Well, then where's your tenacity?
Right.
So you got to have all five in combination, but it all stems from your attitude.
And I'm going to read something from your book real quick. It says,
Okay.
You probably know people who, despite terrible events transpiring in their lives, always seem upbeat and look toward a brighter future. Conversely, I'm sure you've all been around people who find the dark lining in any silver cloud. Through cognitive restructuring, reformatting the negative attitude files on your internal hard drive, we can essentially retrain our brain to approach life in a different way. Here's the thing that really caught me with that. The challenge is to recognize this tendency in ourselves and have the motivation to change it.
Right. And because it all goes into the theory where you don't know you have a problem until you know you have a problem. And you can't really fix a problem in your life until you recognize it as something that you should fix. Some people go on thinking certain things or doing certain things or having a certain habit or whatever, and that's what they do. They don't believe they have the power to change it, so they just wallow in their own misery. And then there's a lot of people that they can be given a Rolls Royce for Christmas, beautiful Rolls Royce, but you know what? A certain person with a negative concept will go, oh, but that hubcap has got a scratch on it.
Yeah.
Oh, no. But instead of looking at the 99% of the glass is half full, man, it's just, And it's Joe, it's so simple to me. It's so crystal clear to me, and why certain people just completely miss the point is I just want
Shake
to
them. Yeah.
shake them.
And that's a
But
challenge, but that's a challenge we all have. I heard this, Sandy. I did some research on thoughts, and I've heard anywhere from 70 to 80,000 thoughts a day is what we have.
yep.
And like 85% of them to 90% of them are negative. So I call it the little man on your shoulder, just coming at you all day long with all these things that aren't true and everything else. And that's what struck me when you said the challenge is to recognize this tendency in ourselves and have motivation to change it. And what you're doing is putting it in people's conscious mind now. Hey, those negative thoughts are coming at you. Just knock them off and think positive. Because in my line, life's too short to keep thinking negative all the time.
You know what I say, Joe? That you have to develop like a like a thought police.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I
You know,
like
it's
that.
like a third person where you're monitoring. You're not part of the thought that comes in. Well, oh, do this. Oh, do that.
Right.
No, you have to monitor. Is that a negative? Is that a positive? And you mentioned the little man or the little woman or the
Yeah.
little, gender-free
Yeah.
entity on your shoulder. One is in a white coat and one is in a black coat.
Right.
You're going to get thoughts from both. But where is your attention?
There
But
you
you
go.
have to recognize that you have the control over what to attend, what you're going to pay attention to. Is it for a positive result? Could something positive happen from this if I do this or say this or think this? Or is it from a negative result? It's like there's a story. I'm sure you've heard this because it's like, and I'm not going to take credit for the story, but it's like a book somewhere. But it's this old wise Indian chief is speaking to his son, and he says to his son, "You know what, son? Inside of every human being, there's a battle going on between a bad wolf and a good wolf. And the bad wolf is speaking to the person with negativity and hatred and vengeance and, hurtful and negativity, whatever. And the good wolf is speaking positivity and love and altruism and empathy and whatever." And the son goes, well, which wolf is going to win? And the father goes, well, it depends on the one you feed.
There you go. There you go. Love it.
But the idea is you have to separate, you have to kind
Right.
of separate it out.
Right.
And negative, hey, why don't you do this? Why don't you go do this? Highlight, delete. We have that power. You have that. You said it. We have the power of choice of what we pay attention to.
Right.
And everybody from Mother Teresa to the Pope to Charles Manson to Putin has negative and positive thoughts,
Right.
like you said. I maybe disagree with the ratio that you put with 90% negative or whatever.
Yeah, I'd heard that. That's really high to me, but
Yeah, it is very high.
yeah,
But even if it's that, you have the choice of paying attention to the 10%.
yeah, yeah.
And most problems on this planet happen because of our extreme limited human thinking.
Right.
It's humans that F up.
Yeah.
It's humans that are effing up the environment. It's humans that are making laws and politics that are unfair to people. And I'm not going to get into the politics
No,
now.
I get it. I get it.
You see what
Yeah.
what that is, and again, not to get into politics, but the adversarial vibe that we have today, like the two forces fighting each other.
Oh, it's frustrating.
It's like horrible. I never remember that in the 70s and 80s, like where there's such a political divide where it's like, if you don't think, I've known friends that 30 years they're friends, and because they differ politically, they're not friends anymore. They were going to go to blows but nobody ever wins a political argument. Nobody ever wins a political argument. Just agree to disagree. You can vote for who I don't want to get into politics.
Yeah.
But
And respect each other. Just respect each other.
just respect each other. You have your own opinion. You like blondes instead of brunettes. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
I happen to like blondes. So it's you like Italian food. I don't like Italian food. I like Indian. Well, okay. You don't have to eat. You know what I mean? And it's the same way with Democrat,
Yeah.
Republican.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You want to believe that? Fine. but we
100%.
don't need to fight over it, for crying out
Oh,
loud.
it's so frustrating. It's we're all part of the human race, and
We are.
but we don't treat each other that way, and that's a
That's
very
correct,
frustrating
Joe.
thing. Okay, I got four things. You got four things for me, real
I
quick?
do.
First one is service. And what really gets me, I want people to understand, Sandy, what we're talking about with service. We're not talking that for service you have to go give $1 million to this person or that organization. Service can be as little as seeing somebody in the grocery store and asking them how good, if they're having a good day. Explain that a little bit. I want people to understand that we can make the world a better place by just waving to somebody driving down the
Right.
street, or smiling to somebody, or just
Right.
asking how someone's day is, or
Right.
something like that.
I totally agree. I totally agree. And I don't remember if I put this in my book, but it could be, you giving somebody life-changing advice, or you're inspired to go somewhere where you meet the love of your life and you're together with them for the rest of your life. It could be that you're inspired from a positive standpoint, or it could be, it could be you teaching somebody how to throw a unbelievable breaking ball, and they end up, because of that, going to the major leagues and makes millions of dollars, and they shed their millions of dollars to charity, or just for you showing them how to throw a curveball. Mm-hmm. Or it could be you looking at somebody checking your groceries, and you say, in Kroger or in Publix or something, and you say, "Hey, hi Jimmy, how you doing today? Hiya, yeah. Jane, how's everything?" And mention them by name. Look at the name tag. They all have name tags. How you doing today? And that, it's like you don't do it for the return. You don't do it just like a leader. A leader doesn't involve with their people on a relationship basis because their business gets better, even though that's what happens, because the people you pay attention to want to work harder for you and your business gets better, whatever.
Right.
But you live with the spirit of that. You live your life waking up to, you go to bed with that kind of attitude where, hey, how you doing? Hey, and you might not be in a good mood, or whatever. You might feel a little sick to your stomach, you have a stomach ache that day. But you know what? If you act as if, and you say, "Hey, how you doing today? Isn't it a great day? It's sun is shining today." You'll start feeling better. And I'm going to go out on a limb, and you might think I'm a little cuckoo, but sometimes you say, even saying hi or waving somebody or making a little kid laugh in the aisle of a basket in the supermarket. But I even go so far as to say, when I hear a siren, when I hear a fire engine, I just think, I don't say, I think, bless. I hope bless, just bless. Somebody in an ambulance, bless. So hope the fire doesn't injure something. So it's even sending out that positive thought. Yeah. It matters. It really, in my belief, and I'll go to my grave thinking this, that it really, really does matter, because we in our consciousness, we know about 10%, of what is known. What the God energy knows, what the God energy can put people in your path to make your life to blow, he had the power, or I don't mean to put a gender on it, because it's an energy. It's not male, female, there's no whatever. But the possibilities are endless. And that's another thing that I constantly reaffirmed in myself, that anything is possible. And I look back on my life and I say, man, there's nothing truer than that statement, that anything is possible. When I thought that, I don't know about this rock and roll career, boom, a call is made, or I'm inspired to go help this guy out. And the guy ends up being the manager of Cyndi Lauper in 1984. And he asks me to join this band, where I did him a favor, signing an autograph for him 3 years earlier. Dave in the Doorway. And there, not
Amazing
only
story,
biggest tour of my life, the most unique tour of my life, because I started with her when 0 records, and she ended up selling, 10 million records or something. But I met the woman that's part of my life to this day. You know the story.
Oh, it's an amazing story.
And it's just a little thing where I see somebody in the doorway, and and I didn't have the time, whatever. So it's just like that, Joe. It's like,
I tell people, make your day better by making someone else's day better.
Right.
And that's what you did with Dave in the Door.
Yep.
That's exactly what you did.
That's exactly right.
Three last questions, Sandy. I wrote a book called The Three Ps, Finding Your Purpose, Perspective, and Passion. So I ask every guest on my show those three questions. What is your purpose in life?
My purpose in life is to, um, well, the thing that comes to mind is to make people happy.
Okay.
Make people put a smile on their face. My purpose in life is just to provide for my family and keep a roof over my head and to try to permeate positivity, whether it's a smile with somebody in a supermarket or, teaching somebody how to play drums and they go on to a platinum career on their own and seeing that satisfaction happen. But what you say is very true. When you make other people happy, you're happy.
Yeah.
It triggers happiness in you to see that. So that's basically it's just to be happy and to live as long as I possibly can, as healthy as I possibly can, and that's basically the size of it. Everybody. I've always read this. I read this situation when I was studying to be a teacher and get a speaker and to get tips. Where if you ask somebody, why do you work? Why do you do what you do every day in your company? Well, it's to make money. What? Why? Answer every question they have with a why.
Why?
And it always comes down to being happy or to provide for my family. It always comes down to that. If they're a leader and if they're a positive person, it always comes down to, being happy and making my family happy, providing for my family.
Awesome. Okay, so now I go to passion, which I skip over perspective, and I'll tell you why here in a second. But I go to passion. What's your passion in life?
My passion in life is just to continue doing what I'm doing right now and speaking and sharing the story with others and then having people come up to me after my presentation and saying, man, you brought me to tears or you've inspired me and I'm going to be doing this differently because I heard you speak. In other words, knowing and having a audible and a physical being told that my presentation helps other people.
Okay.
Because I'm going to be honest with you, Joe, at the beginning, when I was saying to be a speaker or whatever, I had my doubts. So what am I going to share with, especially in a Vistage environment where I'm in a room with 12 to 20 CEOs, what am I going to share as a person, as a drummer to these people that have MBAs? And they're leaders of multi-million-dollar corporations. But it all comes down to the basics. It all comes down to the foundation. And that's what my presentation is, having that foundation. And where you take it is up to you. There are many different ways you can satisfy that foundation, but it's all, when I get going, you could tell right now, when I get going, it's hard to shut me up.
No, it's amazing. It's and I tell this all the time. Some people have challenged me on it, but I believe it. I think your purpose equals your passion, and your passion equals your purpose. And you prove that because it's all about serving. It's all about helping others. It's all about. I tell people you can find your purpose in life when your purpose is greater than yourself.
Right.
And I think what holds it together, Sandy, what holds your purpose and passion together is your perspective on life. So when things come at us that kind of take us out of that perspective, something happened. Your dad dies at 11. Could have changed your perspective really fast. That's the noise that comes at you and tries to take you out of your purpose and passion. What's your perspective that holds your purpose and passion together?
I think the fact that I realized that we have a lot more control over what happens to us than we give ourselves credit for. And that control comes with, again, it's not adhering to a certain formula to create that control, but it's just living your life in a positive way, living your life with a positive perspective, and treating people right, and then having the trust in the God energy to provide you. Another example I use in my Vistage environment is that I come from a career where if I get off the road with Cyndi Lauper playing arenas for a year and a half, and then I get home and I'm sitting in my house the day after the tour ends and I look at my calendar, it's empty. So there's a tremendous amount of faith and belief and trust and surrender to the God energy and the ideas that the God energy gives you to see that, yeah, there'll be another gig. This is not the end of the line. It's unknown. There's a curtain there right now, but that curtain will spread and you'll see the other gig. We just got to keep going. The work ethic. You can't just visualize and have enthusiasm and sit on your couch with a Budweiser watching cartoons and waiting for the phone to ring. You got to maintain the work ethic. So maintain the work ethic and just keep going. Keep going. And you know what? I'm 72 years, I'm going to be 72. And it always happens. Looking back on my life, it always happened where another person would have said, man, you're 2 months without a gig now. You're teaching, you're keeping the lights on. You have a wife that works, so she's keeping the health insurance but like, hey man, when is this going to happen? But I go jam with different people. I go where there's a open mic night. I go and just relationships, again, about relationships. It's not about resume. I could have a long resume and nothing could happen, but it's about relationships and what I did for somebody 3 years earlier, that I get a phone call. Hey, you remember me? And things happen, man. It's just
amazing stuff, Sandy. I want people to get your book. It's called Beat the Odds in Business and Life. They can get it on Amazon. I think that's where I got mine from you. Actually, I got mine from you. Right?
Did I personalize yours? Did you? Yeah. Did I see? I saw you at Chair World.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got mine from you.
They can go directly to Amazon to get it, or if they go to my website, which is sandygennaro.com, there's a way to get a signed copy for no extra charge, but I'll send you a signed copy from my house. And then there's an opportunity to get some Beat the Odds drumsticks as well on my website. Or there's also a digital version. He's got the Beat the Odds drumsticks right now. There's also the digital version on Hudson Music is the digital version. You can also get the Kindle version on Amazon. And there's also an audio book that's available as well.
Love it. And I have to say this before we go, that my favorite song that you ever did was Into the Night. That's still my favorite song. I even watched how he came up with that song. I don't know if you've ever heard that story. It's a pretty amazing story itself.
It is.
But I appreciate you. I appreciate what you do for people when they can listen to your music. I appreciate what you do for people when they can listen to you speak. I appreciate you for what you do for people when they can read your book. And I appreciate you for bringing more positivity into the world. And it's been a joy and a privilege to have you on this podcast. I knew it was going to be great, but this has exceeded my expectations. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Joe. I do appreciate it. And, if ever I can do anything for you, whatever, you want it, let's keep in touch just on a social level, whatever. But if we can cross paths again and under whatever circumstances, that would be awesome. It would be nice to share a meal sometime.
Oh.
Just, that would be just great. Cause, I really, I don't say this to many people I do podcasts with, but I really enjoyed this. And I really enjoyed your questions. They were insightful questions. I know it's obvious that you prepared and I really enjoyed it. I didn't know what I was going to expect, but seeing that smile and the fact that you were involved with baseball, that kind of iced it for me.